what has worked for your family and what has not. Joe's son, to me, has a very exceptional story. Everyone has an exceptional story, but I just met Joe tonight for the first time, and I spoke with her the other night. So Joe's son started talking much later, and she jump-started his recovery by teaching him to read. So will you spend some time, Joe, on talking about his presentation and his experience? Because to me, from what I understand about R, once you got him in intensive intervention, he recovered very quickly, but he was late to start.
Yes, Ryan got his diagnosis at 2.5 through the regional center, and we didn't even know what autism was. We didn't know where to go. We didn't know who to ask for help. So we just really started researching, and the school district at the time, when he turned 3, wasn't of much help. So we were very lucky and fortunate to get him into the UCLA program, and he went there originally at age 3, and it was truly amazing. Ryan went in there, I think he probably had 3 words. He didn't know his dad's name. He called him Scooby, and his brother, he didn't call him a name. He didn't know his own name. He wouldn't look at you. He was really lost. It was dreadful. From doing the UCLA program, you're fortunate enough to have a 2-way mirror. So I was able to go on many sessions and just watch how the therapist over there worked with him. And I then went home with him and emulated everything that I possibly could at home, because at that time we hadn't got a service provider. So the therapy was actually as much for Ryan as it was for me, because that's all we had. The following year we took him then into preschool, and he only was given 6 hours of therapy. Wasn't near enough. So we paid for speech therapy, and through speech therapy the therapist was just instrumental, because she believed that really attacking the academics as well as the social was really, really important. And I was told originally at the UCLA program that you basically had to put an atomic bomb in your child's brain. So from the time that little boy woke up in the morning, 7 days a week, until the time he went to bed, he didn't rest, he just worked. It was cruel, it was awful, but it's what we had to do. And a year later, we put him back into the UCLA program, and then we got with...
So he's 5 now, right?
He was 4. And we got with a wonderful provider, ABI, who then came in and shadowed at the UCLA program, and after that point worked with him for 40 hours. And in conjunction with that, we did speech therapy. And I also, when they went home, 40 hours seems an awful lot of time, but it's really 2 basic days, and there's an awful lot of downtime if the parent doesn't take up that opportunity to really take what the ABA providers are teaching you, and then also doing the academics. And I know when we went to IEPs, people used to frown at me because I started this reading program initially through the speech therapist, and the program that we used was called Edmark, and it was a computer program, and it taught Ryan just odd words. And he seemed to get it really, really quickly. And this was a child that couldn't really string 3 words together. 5 words was basically impossible at that time. So I took that concept and thought, okay, I'm going to teach Ryan to read. I'm going to swing it all the opposite way around, what I do with my typical child. And I'm going to teach him to read in order to expand his sentences. And it sounds very strange, but for Ryan it really worked. And so I taught him, he, she, I, we did picture cards. We just bombarded it and made it into a game. And before I knew it, with conjunction with the ABI program, with OT, just things started to fall into line with him. He went then on to, after he had gained the skills, he started to go to a private preschool, really, really tiny, and with his one-on-one. And I was just incredibly involved over there and befriended one of his preschool teachers. I kept his diagnosis secret because initially, when we got the diagnosis, a lot of people turned their back on us. They didn't want anything to do with us, which was incredibly painful. And I just really didn't want Ryan to be limited. So we made the pretend that he had a really bad speech delay, anything that we could. Through one of his preschool teachers who we befriended, he became really good friends with her son, and he came over an awful lot of a lot of the time. So he got his peer play through that. But my philosophy was that I had to stimulate the brain any way I could, and academics seemed to be something that was left out. And I just thought, okay, I've got to find a way for Ryan to be accepted into a classroom somehow. Socially, he just wasn't there at that point. But at preschool, I thought, gosh, if that kid can read, he's not going to be seen as the kid who couldn't do anything. He would be seen as the smart kid. So it was any skill that I was trying to find. And so this little guy, he loved it. He started reading, and all of a sudden, the little ones accepted him because he wasn't the kid that didn't talk or wouldn't play blocks with them. He was the kid that could read. So eventually, he was accepted into the group, and then from being accepted into the group, he started to blossom. And it was a slow process. But now he's, he's gregarious. I mean, we started out with a little child that basically just wasn't here. And a story I think that you might all appreciate, he went on a play date last week. And one of the remaining things that we had to work on was his frustration, because often he's become a perfectionist through having to repeat and repeat everything through behavioral therapy. So he thinks he has to get things right in 100% of the time. So I've been telling him through his ABA provider, the skills for that was to take a deep breath. So he went on a play date last week, and his little friend, typical, doesn't know that there's any problems whatsoever. And his little friend, Ryan had done his homework prior to going, and his little friend had to do his homework. And his mom said, when I turned up, she looked really embarrassed. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, what has he done? And she said, I don't really know how to tell you this. I've got something to tell you. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, what's he done? And she said, well, we had an incident. And immediately, I'm thinking, it's my child. And he said, well, my little boy, he wouldn't do his homework. And he said, and Ryan was in the other room playing with his sister. And she said, I'm really sorry, I got really mad at him. And I started shouting. And I was getting really frustrated at him. And she said, and then Ryan, came into the room. He goes, are you okay? He said, why don't you just sit over there for a minute and take a really deep breath? And he said, it'll help you. It really does. And he goes, you know what? It's only homework. It's not the end of the world. so that night, I tucked him in bed and I said, you know what, love? I was so proud of you for what you did today. And he said, it wasn't a big deal, Mom. He said, she just needed some help, and she really did need it. So for me, it's just, when I look back and I think of this child who wouldn't look at me, he would kick, he would spit, he would bite. He was just, couldn't do anything. It was just dreadful. And so now, he's just turned 8, and he's telling the parent, it's going to be okay. So she's, and then she said to him also, she said, do you think you could give me a hug? And he went, okay, if that'll help. So